What's up, everyone? This is Greg from the Unexplainable Podcast. Just shooting out a reminder, be sure to follow us on YouTube at the Unexplainable Podcast. We actually have a visual version now, so if you like to see people whenever you hear them, you can hear it there and you can see it there. Also, follow us on Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else you can listen to a podcast. If you want to, you can also follow us on Instagram at the Unexplainable Podcast and on Twitter at the Unexplainable P. Other than that, enjoy the podcast. Welcome back to the Unexplainable Podcast with Clay and Greg. How's it going today, buddy?
It's going good, brother. How are you?
Man, I am doing well. It is fall, maybe. I don't know. But, I mean, I am excited because it was 100 degrees outside today in September, and we are winding down to the days of 80-degree weather. So I had something crazy go on today.
Tell me about the crazy thing that happened to you today, Greg.
So today marks the first day of a 6-month period where I do not leave the couch on Sundays. Do you know what today is?
Today is the beginning of football season, it sounds like.
That is correct. And I'm so freaking excited.
You've waited, well, not all year. Not pretty much all year for this.
I waited a long time. I wore my Super Bowl champion shirt today because I was feeling good. Fly Eagles fly. You know, we might have lost our 3 subscribers right then and there. I'm not sure.
Well, hey, you're not going to take it back, so
No.
let them be gone.
Heck no. But,
yeah, no, so what are the Eagles' chances this year?
So the Eagles' chances are always good as long as they're on the field. That's the way it goes. But this year they're especially good, and that's all I have to say about that.
So there's literally a 50% chance they could win each game, every game?
There's a larger chance than 50% if they're playing at home, and there is a just over 50% chance if they're playing on the road. That's what I'm going to say about that. Regular season, my guess, 12-4.
12-4. All right. We'll see. You got your fantasy football team all squared away, so we'll see how that plays out.
I do. Belichick yourself. That's the best fantasy football name I've ever had and ever came up with. So yeah.
Just come up with it for this season?
No, I've had it for 4 years now.
Okay, sweet. That's right.
It's been kind of lucky because I'm like a wizard at fantasy football. So yeah.
You're a wizard, Gregory.
That's right. But I will tell you, like you should already know, and we both know, we do have a guest coming on the show today.
We do have a guest. Today marks the first real deal guest.
That's right. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm excited to talk to him. He's going to be knowledgeable about stuff that I'm not knowledgeable about at all.
Me as well.
That's right. So it's going to be interesting.
Both idiots, and he is not an idiot about specific topics.
Yes, that's correct.
And he will talk about those today on this podcast.
Yeah. So stay tuned if you want to know who it is and how it's going to turn out. But before he gets here, because I'm just waiting on him to be ready for me to call him in, I do have some news out of Florida today.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So,
what does Florida brew up for us this evening?
I will have to say, disclaimer, this all came from the hurricane. So, for those out there that are dealing with the hurricane, shout out. Keep the good vibes up. We're thinking about you. But this did happen because of the hurricane. 12 bricks of cocaine washed up on the beaches of Florida today. And people are rushing through the hurricane to go pick it up. So it says that in the Orlando area, 1 kilo of cocaine is estimated to be worth $20,000 to $30,000. And
I mean, honestly, we'll look at it this way. I mean, even if you don't have no interest in the cocaine, which, that's for you to decide. That's between you and Jesus. I mean, hey, if money was just like flying around in a hurricane, just like dollar bills going,
you better go pick it
miles
up.
an hour. Yeah, you can go pick it up too. So, well, I mean, maybe not like a car could like fly at the same speed and like hit you or something, palm tree or something, small boat.
Sometimes you gotta take a risk.
You gotta take risks in life, but they're not cocaine snagging in a substantial tropical storm is one of them. Is again up to you and Jesus.
That's right. I think it's actually still a hurricane. It's like one of the longest standing hurricanes to ever hurricane up.
It's standing.
It is
it's just standing there menacingly.
It is. Yes. It did stay in the Bahamas for like a full 30 hours, and the Bahamas is small. It was going like 1 mile an hour in the Bahamas.
It's pretty crazy. It was just observing the school zone.
Yeah. So that was what happened.
Well, obviously, if you've never tuned into the show before today, you figured out this show has nothing to do with weather or sports, except in extremely small doses, because we suck at commentating on both of them.
That's right. Welcome to Sports and Weather. We are the news. Oh my gosh. But I will say that our guest is ready. So if you want to, we can bring him in. Should I tell you who he is before he calls in, or should I call him in first?
No, let's let our special guest introduce himself.
Okay.
Let's let our special caller do the honors.
Special caller. Okay, well, I'll dial him in right now.
All right, see if we can get him on the line.
So our guest today has a deep passion for rowing machines, as well as a diet that only consists of meat. He's a personal trainer from Austin, Texas. You can find him on Instagram at Tanner_Colton_Rhodes. That's very original. Welcome, Tanner, to the podcast. Tanner, thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir. That was a beautiful introduction. A deep love for rowing machines is good, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, way to open it up hot with the diet that consists only of meat, because I actually, it's funny because I gotta have a good buddy of mine that introduced me as that guy that only eats red meat at a party one time, and it caught a lot of weird attention. So that's good, man. That's good. Well, I just want to thank you for having me on, man. And yeah, I definitely have a good. A definite passion for health and fitness and nutrition and just anything that kind of enhances human optimization, really. So I'm excited to talk about that today with you guys.
Sweet.
So have you here.
Yeah, so these are things that we have no knowledge of, so we're excited to learn something about them. And we have some things we want to throw at you to see if you can answer them. So, before we get started, I do want to say we know Tanner. We grew up with Tanner back home, so we've known him for a long time. Went to high school, played baseball with Tanner, went to college with him, and then we both moved away, and we saw each other a couple weeks ago at a wedding, and then got this planned up, and now he's our first guest on our podcast, and now I'm really excited.
Oh, nice. First guest. Here we go.
Your entire lives have been leading up to this moment. So
yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
None at all.
Yeah.
None at all. So, we just had a couple of things. So my first thing I want to know is, how do you keep up to date with fitness knowledge, and how do you constantly change to make sure that you're up to date with the best thing to do?
Really, it's about, I think a lot of it is just consistently educating yourself. And it's really cool. The thing about fitness, whenever you start diving into new information, you kind of fall down these little rabbit holes, and it kind of takes its own natural course and its own natural path, So I may read one book or read one thing, and that idea leads to another idea, and that curiosity leads to another book or another author, and it's just kind of like this river effect, just going downstream. But I also really just try to keep myself educated with listening to kind of like some of the loudest voices out there. I have a lot of strength coaches I listen to and I follow. I have a lot of health and fitness enthusiasts that I listen to on their own podcasts. Of course, the Joe Rogan podcast in and of itself, he has an amazing health, nutrition, and fitness enthusiasts that I kind of keep up with and hear their ideas and kind of play around with some of the things that I know and things that I've heard and kind of formulate your own ideas. And it just kind of takes its own natural path, man. And really it's just staying in the loop. And, there's always a constant influx of new information, especially now that we have the internet, which is amazing. It's an amazing tool. There's always brand new studies being done. Again, you hear these experts talk about specific studies and you go read that study and you see if it's true. And then I have amazing strength coaches that come out with new books and I buy their books and read their books. And then I put it to the test and just try to see if it's effective or if I can make any changes to it, really. So.
Nice.
So I didn't plan this question originally, but I have a question spawned off of what you just said. It seems like, as people, like, say you go on like a fad diet, or say you just want to lose like weight for a wedding, or whatever your like goal is, you kind of like the average uneducated person who doesn't really know anything about fitness would, like, I don't know, probably do like a Google search, or maybe their friend tells them about this or that. And to me, it seems like, as I've kind of done similar things and I've at different times tried to increase my knowledge about fitness, or maybe whatever my goals are, it seems like one guy says one thing and then like a friend says something not exactly opposite, but pretty like different from what the other guy said. So if you are someone who's really in the industry, at what point do you kind of verify on your own that what one person says is correct, or formulate your own opinion and maybe not totally disregard something, but how do you kind of cut through the noise and figure out what's best, I suppose, is my question, because it just seems like it changes so much. And you kind of touched on that with having to always stay in the loop about different sources of information.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because there is so much information out there and it's really kind of hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around things. It's funny because I actually heard Neil deGrasse Tyson actually speak on this. I was listening to him last night on Joe Rogan, and I'm just going to paraphrase for him. But one of the things that he said was you have to have a very wide-ranging fundamental level of knowledge first, so that you can immediately almost cut out the BS that's kind of being spouted out, and so just going to university and getting my degree, and you learn exercise science and chemistry and biology, anatomy and physiology, and I also minored in nutrition. And it's kind of funny because a lot of the nutritional approaches in the university system didn't necessarily match up with some of the biology and the anatomy and physiology. So just having that base knowledge allowed me to ask questions, because I was like, this isn't adding up, right? So you have to have some sort of base knowledge, okay? And that's just going to immediately give you the I guess the fundamental layer to start questioning things, because not everything you're told is true. And the thing about, whether it's especially nutritional research, but even fitness, is there's a lot of paper, there's a lot of words on paper, but they don't mean anything unless it's actually being tested and tried with real human beings. And so there is a level of educating yourself and having that fundamental knowledge, but then it's also so important to hear stories of people. Because there are so many miraculous, just N=1 anecdotal case studies of people from trying things that maybe sound crazy, but that truly did work, not only on a level of their health improved or their joint pain disappeared or whatever it may be, but also whenever it comes to biomarkers and lab results and things like that. And there's so many layers to be peeled back. This is not like a simple. It's funny because a lot of people talk about specific diet things, or these fad diets that you mentioned, or they talk about specific, exercise techniques or whatever's the new hot thing out on the market right now, as if it's just a simple approach. And a lot of it isn't. There's many layers to be peeled back, many layers to be peeled back to kind of get a full understanding of the whole picture. So it's really just starting with educating yourself. I mean, there's no easy answer for me to give that to you. I could, sit here and say, oh, you just got to be smart and question things, but to be able to question things, you have to just read. and you have to educate yourself. You have to consistently try on your own self. Be that N=1 studier on your own body, on your own mind. Pay attention to things. How am I sleeping? How am I feeling? How are my joints feeling? What is my energy like through the day? How's my sex drive? I mean, all these things matter. What is my short-term, long-term memory? These are all real ideas and real kind of feedback systems on what your health actually is. So you do need to read, educate yourself, and cross-reference things too. Go back to things, try to double check. So it's really not an easy picture to paint. I mean, it's kind of what it turned in for me is a lifestyle of just educating myself. So I try to maintain. My ideas, my thought processes have changed a lot.
No, I get that completely, because I mean, even in my profession, completely different from yours, I have to read and study constantly to form my own opinions and then be able to do things the way I interpret them, and the way for me, it's more of an experiment. So it's sometimes an experiment until it works, but the more that the more confidence you have and the more knowledge you have of it, then the better you have and less experimenting you have to do. So.
No, that was actually a really good answer. I think that actually answered some questions for me, just as far as like how I'll search for knowledge in the future, just as someone who's not like in the industry or anything. I guess one follow-up question I have from that is, since you're a professional and you obviously advise others on their own path to success for whatever that may be, have you found more or less consistent paths to specific goals, or is it really just like a person by person basis? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think, yeah, absolutely. I think this goes the same for nutrition, because I think I've kind of become a huge nutrition enthusiast, far more than fitness, actually. I just don't talk about nutrition online as much because it's a little bit harder to discuss, because again, they're deep ideas. But even the same with training. I think a lot of problems that are similar are manifested by the same underlying reason, right? I think a lot of these pains, a lot of these illnesses, a lot of these really just crazy issues that are popping up in people's health, they all start from inflammation, right? Whenever it comes to health problems, typically. And a lot of pains kind of manifest itself. Honestly, in my opinion, it typically comes from just literally muscle and connective tissue weakness. And I've noticed this a lot in my clients. They'll come with specific pains, like a hip pain, a searing hip pain in their side. They're huge yoga enthusiasts. They have hypermobility. They have all the range of motion in the world. They're all Zen, Namaste, 7 days a week, which is great. You should do that. But they have a searing hip pain. And the moment I put them on a strength protocol, their pain entirely goes away. Same thing with somebody has terrible balance. They're real wobbly on their feet. I get them strong, that goes away. Somebody just wants to increase, their sprint speed. You get them strong, they start to get faster. So I think strength is a very, very important concept in somebody's training regimen, like a true strength training. Typically, if you are strong first, everything else will follow. All the other fundamentals of fitness will come along. You'll have better balance. You'll have better stability. You'll have better range of motion if you're training properly in full ranges of motion. And you'll have less joint pain, and you'll have more longevity. Muscular strength is an actual factor that they test for predetermining your longevity and vitality in your life. Muscular strength. So that's on the fitness side. I definitely think that a lot of what we're eating is causing a lot of diseases in the world. And a lot of people will say, everybody's got different DNA and different gut microbiome, which is, a huge talk out in those realms, I guess you could say right now. But still, we're all pretty much the exact same. We're made of the exact same stuff. The biology is the exact same. There are very unique, maybe allergic reactions. But again, I believe that it's inflammation manifesting itself in completely different ways from the exact same cause, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, Joe may eat something over here that gives him seizures. That's a brain inflammation. Somebody else may eat something that anxiety and depression. That's still brain inflammation causing being caused by the exact same thing, but it's manifesting itself in the exact same. It's manifesting itself in a different way, but caused by the exact same thing. So that's where that kind of led me to this all meat diet, and just slowly over the years eliminating a lot of foods from my diet. And not only did it change my health radically and change my views radically, but whenever I started implementing people on that same style of eating, or at least closer to what I do, a lot of their same exact issues started to disappear.
That's genuinely fascinating.
Yeah,
And how
it really is.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so deep so quickly, but like somehow like those questions triggered off, and I had to get them out. So yeah, let's. I didn't mean to break up your more or less schedule of questions, Craig. You can go.
No, you can keep going. Like it's not scheduled. I was kind of curious, like about the same stuff as like, because I mean, you can just tell Tanner's passion. Like he's definitely passionate about that, and he has a reason to be, because he knows it. But I will say, back when we were in high school, Tanner was not in the same fitness that he is today. And I will put a picture of like a before and after, just so it can be seen.
Good.
Because it's amazing, really, what you can do to your body over just a few short years of really working at it. And so I do want to know, kind of, because you are a personal trainer, and you do work with people on a daily basis. So do you make them also only eat beef?
No, that's very extreme. I don't recommend most people jumping right into that, because again, this took me years of kind of coming across this. And if you do want to talk about many of the reasons why, which that would lead down huge rabbit holes right there. But I think it's all starting out simple, man. And it depends on the person, man. There's some people who, I do recommend nutrition. I'm like, hey, you definitely need to get protein. You definitely need to get fat in your diet, because those are very important. So as long as you get plenty of those, you're probably most likely good. In eliminating just certain super inflammatory foods, like just limiting alcohol, and just trying to take away as much grains and bread and dairy as possible. If you're allergic to dairy, you can have that tested, and it's super easy to find out. If it doesn't give you an issue, that's fine. But really the main thing, I just say, hey, eliminate all processed foods and fast food, soda, sugar. That's pretty easy. I would say, like, maybe not easy for most people, but you can still eat a large, I guess, a very diverse group of foods just based off that concept. But you're going to be eating whole foods, which is what we're designed to consume. If you're eating goldfish, obviously you're going to have some things going on that are wrong with you. But I don't recommend only eating beef, but if people do ask about it. And the only time I really start talking about it a lot is whenever people, they just kind of bypass it as if it's a crazy idea. And I get it. It sounds crazy. But it's really not, actually. And there's a lot of information, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of anecdotal studies behind it on why you should do it. And there's literally thousands of stories of people curing themselves of diseases, cancers, tumors, lifelong severe depression, and a carnivore-based diet was the only thing that helped. So it's very important to people's stories, because you have no idea. Like, nutrition studies, man, is 98% food questionnaire based, meaning people wrote down what they ate on a piece of paper over the last 3 years, and they tested their biomarkers and basically said, I see that they've eaten red meat 5 times this week and they have a risk of heart disease. There you go. Red meat leads to risk of heart disease. I mean, that's the worst study known to man, and that's what has been basically bought by the American people. But obviously the study wasn't very well talked about how it was done. Nobody knows that, So no, I do not make people just eat beef, but I definitely recommend certain nutritional approaches.
No, that's awesome. I mean, so I
keep going down these rabbit holes, man.
No, you're good. So you mentioned about not drinking sodas. So about that. So I stopped drinking sodas. I actually stopped drinking sodas last September. So it's been a full year of no sodas. But I drink Topo Chico a lot. Is that bad?
No, not at all, man. I mean, a lot of people drink sodas more because of the carbonation. And I mean, Topo Chico is mineral water, man. I mean, that's not bad at all. That's good. That's totally fine. If you just crave that carbonation, that's a great go-to for sure.
Sweet. So
So
yeah,
let me stop you real fast because I think I've got to go back on this before we get too far away. I guess I didn't realize this going into this session today, so I apologize for my unpreparedness. Do you only eat beef?
So I did an experiment on myself after hearing a bunch of. Um, can I actually step back to explain why I kind of got into this?
Yeah,
Please,
Just
that's
to kind
fine.
of like, formulate a
Yeah.
prettier picture here for you guys. So
Go
I'd
for it.
heard about the carnivore diet about a little over a year ago. So you guys can check this guy out. His name is Dr. Shaun Baker. He's an orthopedic surgeon. Been an athlete his entire life. He's in his 50s now. I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he kind of caught some fame for being this doctor that literally only eats red meat. And I heard him talk about it, and it was very interesting because he was saying that, a lot of these lab results based off of cholesterol and these biomarkers or these lab markers just aren't the full picture. They're looking at the wrong thing, right? And a lot of these things don't lead to certain diseases that they're talking about. So he actually formulated a mini layered approach to this, and as to why he got into it. The reason he got into it was kind of some of the things I was experiencing. So I decided to try it. I did a full carnivore diet, meaning I only ate red meat and eggs for 2 weeks straight. And this is about a year ago, and I felt amazing. But I was like, that was cool. I'm just going to go back to eating vegetables. I was still really high fat, low carb keto, and I was still feeling pretty good. My exercise performance was through the roof. I felt amazing brain energy all the time. But then I started getting into this long series of extended fasting. So last year, the whole year, I did 5 extended fasts. So I did 2 3-day fasts, 2 4-day fasts, and 1 5-day fast. And after I got done with that 5-day fast, I had, slowly worked my way back into putting food. You don't start with vegetables, right? You start with like yogurt and little small pieces of fruit and some bone broth and some teas to kind of get your digestive system working properly again over the next 3 days. And then you start going back to your regular eating pattern. So that's what I did. And I started noticing a lot of these things that Dr. Shaun Baker was talking about when I was eating vegetables. It was mainly kale and spinach. I noticed that when I came off this 5-day fast, I would eat kale and spinach and certain vegetables, and my digestive system would literally lock up and I would feel sick. And I would be in pain. And then I started noticing that my joints would hurt, right? Because whenever you fast for an extended period of time, your body is 100% clean. Like there's no toxins, there's nothing in there. Your digestive system is 100% basically replenished. It has rebuilt itself literally over 5 days. Your body has rebuilt itself after 3 days, essentially. Your cells have rebuilt themselves after 3 days. Your mitochondria has rebuilt themselves after about 3 days. So I'm 5 days in. My body is clean. My body has gotten everything out. And I'm eating these vegetables that Shaun Baker and some other people were talking about were causing massive immune responses. And I was like, man, maybe it's these vegetables. Like maybe it's really causing a lot of problems. So I was like, I'm going to go back on this carnivore diet and just to try to see if I can pinpoint what vegetables are causing these issues in my health. And so that's kind of how it started out. And I just kept researching and kept finding different doctors and different researchers. I found Dr. Paul Saladino. I found out about this clinic in Hungary where they're literally curing cancers and diseases in Hungary with a 100% carnivorous diet. And I started coming across all these stories of people, and I just kept doing it. So I was eating just straight up about 2 pounds of red meat steaks a day, 4 whole eggs, eating a bunch of tallow, so it's basically just rendered beef fat, and I was eating organ meats a couple of times a week and bone marrow, and that was it. And I started noticing some almost immediately miraculous health changes, right? My athletic performance went through the roof. I literally could not get tired. And I was teaching rowing, and I felt an immediate impact. And my joint pain went away. My sleep improved drastically. I had crazy brain energy, far better than what I experienced on keto. And my digestive system was working at 100% efficiency. I had no bloating, no pain. I had none of that postprandial just energy dip. I would eat, 12-ounce steak with some eggs or some fat, and I would feel more charged up rather than, a little tired. So I became more in tune with my digestive system and the way it affected my brain energy than I've ever been before. And so I just didn't stop. I just did it for about 4.5 months straight, 100% strict carnivory. And it was the best thing I've ever done, man. And I'll even say this, man, my sex drive increased at a rapid rate. So I was noticing all these amazing health benefits at a much more noticeable rate than even on a ketogenic diet. It was the best I've ever felt in my life. And so lately, I'm still my still fundamental, I guess, my fundamental layer is carnivory. So I'm still eating about, like today, I've eaten 2 pounds of ribeye steaks and 4 whole eggs. But I've had, a little bit of blueberries and a little bit of other stuff here and there. So I'll still do that. But I'll still go days where I'm 100% only eating animal product. And I'll have some other days where I add in some other stuff. But I still don't eat processed foods. I don't eat sugar unless on special occasions like at a wedding or something. I kind of just do whatever there. But, yeah.
So are you considered an anti-vegan?
That's a tricky conversation, man. So I think if you're trying to do a vegetarian, plant-based, vegan diet for health purposes or even protecting the planet purposes, I am 100% against you. There's so many studies and reports, and there's just so much information showing that is 100% false, and it's all like propaganda and this weird ideology. Now, if somebody's doing it for ethical reasons, that's a different topic. Like if you're doing it for religious, ethical reasons, I'm not gonna say anything about that. That's your own personal beliefs. Now, for health, absolutely not. 100%, I would highly recommend staying absolutely the exact 180 opposite, right? So, and that's an important thing to that's an important point to bring up because, I mean, there's a lot of studies showing and a lot of studies showing that the people who live the longest are eating the most meat and the most animal fat, right? So like the Okinawans, they eat, or even Hong Kong actually. So Hong Kong, the city of Hong Kong is the longest living people in the entire world, and they eat more meat on average than anybody else. You look at the Inuits, you look at the some sub-Saharan tribes in Africa that only literally eat meat and animal fat, and they're the healthiest population to have ever lived. And that is very well documented. They don't even have words for heart disease or cancer in their language, right? People just die of natural causes, right? So the fact that you're going to improve your life just by eliminating meat and just only eating plants is just a ridiculous philosophy. You will feel better if you go vegan from eating standard American diet, eating processed food and sugar. Of course, anything that's not that is going to make your health appear better. But shortly you'll find that your health begins to deteriorate on a vegan diet, right? Because your brain, your body absolutely requires animal fat and cholesterol for your brain, for your neurons to even function and fire properly. There's large studies showing that there's massive connections to depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia in diets that are vegetarian and vegan compared to people who are omnivorous. There's massive studies showing, when I say massive studies, I mean using large cohorts of people showing that there are literally lesions and holes within people's neurons to prevent them from firing signals properly whenever they don't have cholesterol in their diet. So yeah, I would definitely not recommend a vegan or vegetarian diet to anybody.
Well, so quick point to that. And again, I hope it doesn't come across as he's like drop mic. Anyway, no, like I hope it doesn't come across as me defending either or. Obviously, I'm willing to that meat eating diet, but I'm obviously not educated enough to like actually defend either or. But it's funny because when you were talking about you feeling the best you've ever felt based off of your solely carnivorous diet, I can vividly remember conversations I've had with friends who have spoken about their experiences with just kind of vegan diets for a time, saying the same thing, like, oh my gosh, it's the best I've ever felt, and blah, blah, blah. And again, like I said, I don't know whether or not, like, what's best, and obviously I can't tell them they're bullshit because that's what they feel. Mm-hmm. But I think that was kind of the reason I said what I said at the beginning. Like, I've heard one person say this, and I've heard one person say that. And even in this very podcast, even though we've probably been on for like, 40 minutes, it's still coming up. It's like, it's crazy. Like, man,
Yep.
there's just so many differing opinions.
There's so many opinions, and everyone has theirs. And it really depends on, like, it would really depend on a large scale test of multiple people. But all in all, it's whatever, in my opinion, it's whatever makes you feel the best. And
Well,
Yeah,
how
and,
about
and
go
to
ahead.
just speak on Clay's point, I've actually done a vegan diet. Funny enough, a couple of years ago, I did a strict vegan diet and I did a plant-based diet after that. I'm sorry, vegan diet, and I went to vegetarian. I included eggs back in, and then a heavy plant-based diet. And the reason it kind of went slowly over about a period of 2 to 3 years, I just started eliminating plants from my diet. I went on a ketogenic diet, or actually first I went on a paleo diet after the heavy plant-based diet, still eating lots of plants. And then I heard about the ketogenic diet, went on that, still eating some plants, and then went to a carnivore. So it's like I slowly moved from the very opposite end of the spectrum to what I do now. And it's not because it's again these rabbit holes, and it was because I was noticing and being honest with myself that my health was not at its optimal function. So whenever I did a vegan diet, I was fooled by that documentary, What the Health, right? Most people have probably seen What the Health. And looking back at it now, it's so silly that I fell for it because there's so much science that is just plain wrong. And they use really BS studies, honestly. They use epidemiology studies, which again is straight up food questionnaire based, right? It's all correlative studies rather than causative studies. And there are causative studies to show the exact opposite of what these films are showing. And again, like I said, when anybody goes from a standard American diet, eating sugar and processed foods, meaning like pasta and lots of grains and stuff like that, to a vegan diet, a smart vegan diet, you're going to feel better, right? You're going to feel better because you have eliminated some main key components that are causing inflammation, right? That is causing these disruptions in your health. So, of course, you're going to feel better at first, but the longer you go on that diet, you're going to start noticing that your body is not getting almost any nutrients, because what people don't realize is that plants are very toxic. What I mean by that is there was a study done by Bruce Ames back in the 90s showing that 99.9% of all pesticides consumed by human beings are all in the plants, right? So coming from the plants,
definitely.
meaning these pesticides in and of themselves, they produce plant toxins or defense systems that the plant creates so that animals don't eat them, essentially. And your body is very reactive to that. 98% of the plants out there we cannot eat as human beings because we will die. You eat raw cassava, you will die. Raw cashews, you will die. Raw kidney beans, you will die. Right? There's a lot of things that you have to do properly to even be able to eat them. Right? Or you will literally freaking die from like cyanide poisoning. Right? That's in plants. And so there's a lot of these plant defense systems set up within the plant that prevent your digestive system from absorbing it, because it's not what you eat that makes you healthy, it's what you absorb, right? What are you absorbing into the human body? That's what matters, right? And the most bioavailable form of nutrients, right, is only found in animal meat, right? Meaning that it is readily available, meaning that your stomach acid, your liver, your gallbladder, and your pancreas has all the enzymes readily available it needs to immediately emulsify that piece of animal product to immediately be absorbed within the human bloodstream to be utilized at its most effective rate. Plants, on the other hand, are wrapped up in lectins and legumes and these FODMAP type things, and wrapped up in this like fibric matrix, right? So you don't absorb anything, right, through the small intestine from vegetables. Your body has to send it to the colon, it has to ferment, it has to rot, which is why you fart a lot. So vegans, vegetarians fart probably more than anybody on the face of the earth because they're eating tons of fiber. And I know because I was a vegan at one point, and my digestive system was terrible. And after about a period of 2 to 3 weeks, I felt amazing. I was like, oh my God, I feel so good. But I was eating all whole raw food, so I wasn't eating anything processed. So of course I felt better. But then after about a month and 2 months into it, my health immediately took a downturn. I was sleeping real bad. My digestive system was terrible. I started noticing full pieces of food on my stool, so my body was not absorbing anything. I couldn't stay awake. I lost like 20 pounds, right? And I'm not like, I don't pack on a whole lot of body fat anyway. I was down like 153 pounds and not healthily. I was really skinny. I was ripped, yeah, but not in a healthy way. So my body started pulling from its own reserves. That's what happens with these vegan and vegetarian diets. Their body starts to become starved, and they start pulling from their own reserves. They start pulling from their own muscle tissue, which is why they start to look emaciated, right, on the limbs. But then they have this bloat and this extra fat on their gut, right? It happens all the time, and this is not just one-off little occurrences. This is actually a very, very common trend. If you look at most vegans and most vegetarians, they're most of the time overweight and tired and gassy, literally. And that's not just because it's not because they have this weird DNA. It's a very common trend because of the underlying biology of what the human body requires and the way the digestive system is set up to absorb nutrients. So I think especially if you go on this vegan diet for a year or longer, which a lot of people do, right, they will literally start to take a turn for the worst. It's just inevitable. It's going to happen. And actually, I think there's a study. It's like 75% of people who go on vegan diets end up quitting, right? And I think it's because they start to literally feel like shit. Their body starts to deteriorate and they can't sustain it.
Yeah, no, I don't know anyone who's gone on a vegan diet who stayed on it more than 2 months. They just feel bad after a while.
You feel like crap.
Completely unrelated. I saw like one of those, I don't know if it was like Snapchat tiles or whatever, but I saw like that same headline. I was like, oh, that's funny. But yeah, no, so.
Yeah, and it's funny, the common death, or what the most common form of death is among vegans and vegetarians?
What's that?
So
obesity?
it's heart disease. It's heart disease.
Oh, heart disease. Sorry, it was a little bit lag there, so I think it's.
So there's like this huge, weird fear of animal fat, cholesterol, and red meat. Again, it's a BS study that was not done properly at all. And it's a correlative study, not a causative study, which is very important, right? Because correlation does not equal causation. It just leads to weird trends. But you don't factor out many of those other things that people are doing, right? But again, it's not a meat eater's dilemma. It's a high carb insulin signaling dilemma. So the more carbs you eat, the more you signal insulin, right? And the more food that you eat that your human organism is not designed to absorb properly, your body is going to shut down and deteriorate. And there's actually many studies showing that heart disease, and actually I think this is actually the title of a study, heart disease is not linked to cholesterol or fat. It is an inflammatory disease, right? Again, even heart disease is inflammation in nature. Brain, like Parkinson's, depression, anxiety, all these things are inflammation in nature. It's all the same thing. It's just manifesting itself differently. So that's a really important thing to think about.
I feel like I need to throw away everything in my cabinets.
Right.
I actually had clients do that I was like, hey, how far do you want to go into this? They're like, I want to go right in. I'm like, take all the crap out and throw it away. Because then if you don't see it, you don't think about it.
You don't want it.
Right.
Yep. You just open up your fridge and that's what's there. Cool. That's what I'm going to eat.
Man, I know this is going to take us down one level deeper, but I feel like we're at the door, so I'm just going to go ahead and push us in. So if like, for the record, I believe you. I feel like I respect the fact that you've done research. It seems like you've thoroughly tested it, and obviously you're a professional. So I'm gonna take what you're saying as valid. But just in your opinion, if what you're saying is all correct, how, as America, or I guess a lot of cultures in the world, just speaking generally, how did we get it so wrong?
Because
why? Well, I mean, maybe he'll touch on the fact that a lot of it is money driven. I don't really know, but if what you're saying is true, and we're all should be maybe closer at least to this, meat based diet, and obviously it's different for many people, but how are we at the point where we're at? I've never heard really any of that stuff. I don't know that Greg has either. So, why is this all new, I guess, or not new, but why doesn't the general population kind of know as much as it does?
Right. I think a lot of it is government driven for sure because, the government is the ones who created the food pyramid in, I think it was 1976. And if you actually look at the CDC trends of heart disease and when the food pyramid was created, you'll actually see a very upward trend of obesity and heart disease in America or in the West for sure. And that was whenever, if you look at the food pyramid, they're telling you to eat 60% of your diet is grains and cereals and carbs and all this crap. And the next is like vegetables and fruits, right? So the very top two main portions of your diet that the government is telling you to eat based off the food pyramid is all insulin signaling foods, again, that you already absorb very poorly. And then the very tippy top, the very smallest pieces are animal fat and meat. And most people are actually following that suggestion. If you look at what most people are eating, I would even say most people are eating a mostly vegan diet without even realizing it. They're just eating carbs and bread and freaking cereals and crap like all the time, and very little meat. Very, very little meat in the American diet. If you actually look at it, the statistics show that only 12% of the diet is coming from meat on a caloric intake. So if it's only 12% of the diet, and it's not being caused by the meat. We keep saying the same shit. You go to your doctor and they say, "Oh, eat a well-balanced diet." Well, for one, what the hell does that mean? That sounds like a cop-out because they don't know what to say. And two, they just say, "Oh, limit red meat, and eat more vegetables." And guess what? They don't ever get better. They continuously keep medicine. So it's not working. So I think I think it originally started as, for one, I think it was very poor studies. They were correlative studies, not causative studies. That led to a really just BS ideological fascination that had to have been animal fat and meat. When there are many societies that live mostly meat-based diet and are actually statistically some of the healthiest people to ever live, but they ignored those, right? They ignored those those studies, and they decided to go with their own biased opinion. And that was whenever it got infiltrated into the government recommendation in the mid 70s. And then again, and now it's just kind of tradition. It's easy to say. It's easy to say eat a well-balanced diet. It's easy to say eat your veggies and fruits and grains, and that's what's good for you. It's easy to say ease up on your red meat intake and your fat intake. It's just easy. It's become habit almost, but it's not working. It's not effective. I think it's a combination of many issues, and also I do understand at the same time, we have to feed over 300 million people here in America. And, agricultural products are really easy to grow, and it's really easy to get mass quantities. It's just weird, man. It's a weird little train ride that we've gone on. But some of these diseases and illnesses never existed 100 years ago, man. Like you look at the early 1900s, man. Like the obesity rate in America was very, very low. But guess what? Everybody was eating real food. They were eating meat, eggs, fat, dairy. That was the main portion of their day whenever it came to their food intake. Very little vegetables, very little fruit. And there wasn't these health issues, and we've just slowly kind of gotten away from that. So I believe that the further you get away from these fundamental things that your body needs to survive, right, the more your body is going to shut down in these different forms of disease. So, but man, a lot of health professionals keep whispering the same things. They keep giving the same recommendations, but I mean, literally the definition of insanity is you keep doing something the same and it doesn't work. That's insane, man. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're in this insanity loop. Nothing's working. We're very pharmaceutical driven. It's almost as if we pride ourselves on giving people tons of meds and never getting better. So I definitely think there needs to be a new approach and a new look at it, and just being honest with ourselves and saying this shit's not working and we need a new approach. Yeah, that carnivore diet sounds crazy. That keto high-fat diet sounds crazy. But guess what? We're doing the exact opposite right now, and we're all fat and stupid, literally. Why is everybody fat and stupid now? I don't know. It's new, man. It's definitely freaking new. And I'm not trying to be rude when I say that. I mean, literally, like, there's actually been studies showing that the average size of the human brain has been shrinking over the last 100 years. I'm not making that up. So, I don't know. It's weird, man. It's weird.
It is weird. It's fascinating, though.
But I will say, speaking of insanity, what do you think about that insanity workout?
I've actually only done it one time, man. And it was a kick-ass workout. I did it like 6 years ago. But I think it's a good option for a lot of people.
So
Especially, go ahead.
no, that's awesome. I was saying that to move us on to something else. And so this is something I want to I want to challenge you. So I'm gonna tell you a diet that I did.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me if you think it worked.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, because you didn't see me for a while, and I got Clay. Maybe were you there whenever I did this last year? Yes. So
I was with you last year, but I don't remember. I don't really remember you talking too much about diets.
So last year I got challenged to a weight loss competition.
Nice. Oh, that's right. And I'll have a note for that at the end. Go ahead.
I took it full force because I had a chance to win about $4,000 based on this weight loss competition.
Nice.
So I jumped all the way into it. But I will tell you, I was extremely overweight. I'm still overweight, but I was 330 pounds.
Okay.
Which is pretty heavy, even for a 6'4" man.
Yeah.
And it was the worst out of shape I've ever been. So at this point, it started last September. I stopped drinking sodas, number 1. I stopped all bread, number 2. So I didn't eat any carbs at all. I wouldn't say I was fully on a keto diet, but I did not eat any carbs. I will say every single morning during the week, I ate bacon and I ate eggs. That was what I ate every day.
Awesome.
And then on the weekends, I ate steak and eggs. Every lunch, I ate a grilled chicken salad every single day. This was from September to December. And then every night, I ate steak and asparagus. So I did this for however long that was, September to December, or September to January. But and then I exercised 3 days a week because I was still a normal American who doesn't go to the gym every single day. Okay, so in those 3 months, did that work?
Well, what do you know?
Did that work? I'm sorry, I thought you were continuing. In those 3 months, did that work for you? Are you saying? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
Well, it depends, man. For one, so this is a thing. This is like a big problem that I've come across with a lot of people who transition from a standard American diet to what sounds like a very ketogenic diet in nature, right? Lots of protein, lots of fats, and very little carbs. So your body's probably going to start eventually evolving its way into a state of ketosis, right? Because the ketogenic means your body gets into the state of ketosis. It works if you make sure you get electrolytes for one, right? Because that's a huge thing. Whenever you're eating a lot of carbs, your body is storing a lot of water along with those carbs, which means you have more sodium, potassium, magnesium, all these other minerals and electrolytes being stored because of the extra water. Whenever you transition to a ketogenic diet, of course, you're not storing as much glycogen, right? So your body is not storing as much water. So you start filtering through those electrolytes at a rapid rate. And so a lot of people experience what's called keto flu, okay, at first. And I tell them to get their sodium intake way up, right? And making sure they're getting extra electrolytes. And all that keto flu symptom disappears. Their headaches disappear. Their fatigue disappears. Their metabolism kicks back up because sodium is so important that if you don't get enough of it, you'll have a heart attack, right? And also making sure that you're getting enough calories too, because if you're not getting enough calories and you go on a starvation diet and you're not tracking to see how much you need, you're a huge guy, 6'4", so you actually probably need quite a bit of calories. And I've seen a lot of guys do this, and women as well. Huge people, and they'll eat 1,400 calories a day, which is not enough at all to sustain life. So then your body goes into this fight or flight response, and you will actually hold on to more fat. So I think it depends if you had all the variables under control. It could definitely work at amazing rates if all the variables were taken control of. Because if not, then your metabolism and your hormones can get out of whack. So I think it just depends.
So now I'm going to tell you what happened. Okay. So
okay.
You pretty much talked through the backside of this. The first couple weeks, I felt absolutely awful. And I lost some water, but I still didn't lose a ton of weight right at first. And I ended up, someone I worked with told me a bouillon cube and water, like warm water. Drink that once to twice a day. So I did that. I no longer had like the flu symptoms, and I was able to make it through the day. Next thing, I wasn't eating enough. So I started bumping up. I ate like 2,200 calories a day instead of I was eating like 1,300, like something ridiculous.
Man.
And so I was eating ended up going with 2,200, and in those 3.5 months, I lost 43 pounds. So
nice.
It was nuts. So I think it is possible. You just have to find out what works best for your body.
Yeah. And it has to be something that's sustainable too.
Yep.
Right? Because if you're tired, lethargic, and feel like shit, it's not sustainable. And eating enough, right? Because if you're constantly hungry, that's not sustainable.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy because and actually have had female clients especially, because females tend to undereat like crazy. And it is so hard to convince them that they actually need more calories because they have their mind wrapped around it. They're going to get fat, and eating more protein is going to make them get so jacked. And I'm like, listen, it doesn't work like that. It's not possible. But it's definitely very possible, man. And most people that I actually kind of help guide along this type of diet, or that type of diet that you did, they see amazing results, man. As long as those variables are taken under control, as long as the sodium, and as long as the calories required, and as long as the fat is high. Because if somebody just eats protein or not enough fat, you will feel like crap because your body needs that fat. Your body doesn't want to burn protein for energy. It doesn't want to. And it's very hard for it to, because your body is a protein creating machine. Your body does nothing but create freaking proteins like crazy, like muscle proteins, eye proteins, organ proteins, like immune proteins, everything. Like your body's protein essentially, and they have so many functions. Like every single cell has a protein ion channel basically. So protein is so important, but you have to have that fat, because if you don't have that fat, your body will start pulling from those reserves of muscle protein to give itself what it needs, and it just doesn't want to. But it's doable for sure, but you have to find what's sustainable, and you have to look at all the variables, right? Because again, I remember I had one female client that she just swore the ketogenic diet wasn't working for her, and I tried everything. And I started playing around with everything, calories and electrolytes, and but it's hard to know. I wasn't there with her. I don't know if she was doing it. She was the only person I ever had that I didn't work on, to be honest. And but every time I looked at the calories were still low. They were still low, and women have different hormone requirements, and if the calories are too low, their body will literally just hold on to fat, because a woman's body is designed to procreate, to have a baby, and it will hold on to fat as much as it can. And especially if you start starving yourself, your metabolism isn't going to work, because your body's like, okay, well, we're in basically a level of starvation here, so we need to hold on to everything so that in case we get pregnant, that we have all the reserves we need. That's kind of what's happening with the female body. So, there's just, again, many layers have to be peeled back. So that's why I always say you got to educate yourself, because there's many can go wrong, and it's not because the diet didn't work, it's because the approach was wrong, so
no, that's cool.
That's awesome though, that you lost that weight, dude. That's huge.
It's fun. I might do it again.
I remember one day my note at the end of that.
You should. My dad. My dad, Joe Party.
Oh yeah.
I was saying, I remember one day I was sitting at my apartment. I don't think I was doing anything, and Greg just texted me out of the blue, and he's like, do you want like, I forget the exact number, but he's like, do you want like 60 wings? And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, what's going on here? He's like, my boss, I'm in this competition. He just like had 60, I don't know, Buffalo Wild Wings or something like that delivered to my door. I can't eat them. It's like, do you want them? I was like, I'm already in the car. So it's like, but it was just,
he ate them in front of me.
I really did. But no, awesome. I completely forgot about that. But yeah, I'm proud of you. I actually didn't know exactly how much you came out losing. So that's really awesome, dude.
That's awesome, man. And dude, you just keep it going, man. I mean, it's amazing what happens. Like, the more weight you lose, the better you feel, the more confidence you have, the better energy you have. It's just crazy how it affects your entire life. Like, and before I started personal training, in Austin, I was trying to start my own little business when I was in Virginia Beach and doing everything online. And it's definitely a learning curve for me on how to approach that. Next time I would definitely approach that differently. But man, I had a lot of clients that saw amazing success on a low carb, high fat, moderate to high protein diet, man. Like, my dad lost like 40 something pounds, like really quickly. My mom lost a lot of weight. I had a lot of clients that lost a lot of weight, but not just lost weight, because just losing weight doesn't matter. It's the body composition that comes along with it. It's building muscle and losing the weight, and having more energy and just having more sex drive. Like, that's a huge sign. Like, literally, as human beings, we're here to procreate. So if you don't have that sex drive, something is wrong. Something is definitely wrong. And I will say that was one thing I noticed on that vegan and vegetarian diet, man, is my sex drive just plummeted, right? Because plummeted, dude. I mean, my body was just in this crazy survival state, and it was pulling from all my reserves. And your body requires cholesterol for the creation of testosterone. It's very, very, very difficult for your body to create testosterone without cholesterol that you get through the diet. So that's a huge thing to look at. And the only time a vegan diet is successful is whenever it's highly supplemented. You have to supplement like everything, and you have to do it very, very methodically for it to even work. And some people do, and that does work for them. But it's very difficult. But I'm glad that you were actually able to show that you can lose a lot of body fat with basically just bacon and eggs. Yeah. Funny enough, this will probably please a lot of people about this. I was just reading a study the other day. This was a direct causation study as well. They found that eating bacon actually prevents colon cancer. So there you go.
Eat more bacon.
Eat more bacon, and you're 100% solid.
That's crazy. That's rad. Well, man, how'd you get interested in this? Was there like a certain moment, or was there just like a certain period of your life when you just kind of just kind of clicked and you just decided to go in on it? Because I mean, as far as I remember, like back in high school, I don't really recall you having this much interest in it. So was there just like a certain time that you just wanted to dive in?
I actually missed the first part of the question, man. Are you when did I become interested in health, nutrition, fitness? What was the question?
Yeah, I took the really long road of saying, when did you start getting interested into all this stuff? Just personal training and fitness and nutrition, all of the above. I just didn't realize it from knowing you earlier. So I just wonder if there's like a certain time or experience that caused this interest.
I feel like I've always loved taking care of my body physically, I guess you would say. Even growing up, we were always outside playing, doing dumb sports out in the yard, walking up and down the creeks, playing sports, baseball and doing a little bit of football, a little bit of powerlifting, all that stuff. I've always physically. I never really looked at the nutritional aspect until I had several health problems occur. So whenever I decided I want to study fitness and human performance, I wanted to study exercise science when I went to college. So that's what I did. So I have a degree in kinesiology towards fitness and human performance. I'm minored in nutrition. I just went into it just because I wanted to learn. And I was interested in the human body, and I've always loved the human body. I think it's very fascinating. The complexity and intelligence of the human body always kind of reinforced my spiritual beliefs to me because it's so intelligent. It's just amazing. And so I wanted to learn more because this is our vessel. We have this vessel always, right? Our entire life. So I wanted to learn about it. And so I started studying nutrition, but I started coming across many health problems when I went to college, man, that I had never had before. It's funny. I used to think that gluten intolerance wasn't a thing. I didn't think it existed. Coming from a small town where nobody talks about health ever, it's really easy to be naive like that. But I started getting really sick. I was getting really, really sick, lots of horrible pain in my digestive system, and my body would just purge itself without me being nauseous at all. And it happened like clockwork, like once a month. And I was like, what the heck is wrong with me, man? Oh my God. And it would be terrible. I'd be like literally curled up in a ball for 48 hours and couldn't move. It hurt so bad. And I went to a gastroenterologist, and they stuck a camera down my throat, looked at my intestines, and saw that I was, allergic to gluten. So they're like, you're allergic to gluten. Just don't eat bread. So I quit eating bread and anything that had gluten in it, and all that pain and all that sickness completely disappeared from my life.
Crazy.
And so that was when I study nutrition, because I was like, I don't know, I just never correlated nutrition to health, really, I guess you could say. And, being 17 or 18 at the time, just naive again. And that was where that got started, and I really kind of started going way more hardcore into it. And then I had some other health problems occur. Then the next year, my sophomore year in college, man, I started getting, I've never had it diagnosed. I've never gone to a doctor because I knew that they weren't going to solve anything for me. They were just going to try to slap Band-Aids on it. I don't want to call them seizures because I don't know what it is, but they were seizure-like symptoms to where my body would entirely collapse. I would be walking, I would literally completely collapse. My brain would shut off, and my muscles would shut off with it. The first time it ever happened, CJ Long was right in front of me. It was a morning after a night of heavily drinking. I walked into the front door and just collapsed on my face. Got up and was like a little out of it, had no idea what happened, collapsed again, got up, collapsed the third time. Had no control over my brain and my body, had no idea what was going on. And then that started happening almost every single day for a couple of years. It was crazy. So that really motivated me to dive very deeply into understanding the brain and understanding the underlying anatomy and physiology and biology of food. And the reason I never went to a doctor is because, for one, I knew they weren't gonna solve the problem. And I had just started my journey with nutrition and just kind of diving into it. And I got really interested in Hippocrates, who was the father of medicine. And his belief system of what a physician is to be is he believed that a physician does not heal the human body. The human body has an innate ability to heal itself. Of whatever disease, doesn't matter. Your body knows what's wrong and it wants to heal itself. So a physician is supposed to find the obstacle that's preventing the human organism from healing itself. And the physician finds that obstacle, removes the obstacle, and then just watches and observes that person's body naturally heal itself, because it will and it wants to. Your body is highly intelligent. And so I love that, and I believed in it 100%. And I just started literally educating myself and trying. Educating myself, trying. Educating myself, applying. To see what correlated to those symptoms being worse, what correlated to, my gut disruption, what correlated to my joints hurting, what correlated to enhanced athletic performance, what correlated to increased sex drive, what correlated to low sex drive. I did this. It was not a quick solution. It took me years. And so that was definitely a moment of really, really wanting to learn. And just constantly being just obsessed with finding out information. And, I tried the vegan diet, tried the vegetarian diet, and I would say that was when my seizures were the worst. That was the worst they were. Or not seizures, but lapses in mental function, I'll say. I would throw things down. I would twitch. And I had many friends that saw it happen. I didn't really tell a lot of people because I didn't want people to be like, oh my God, you need to go to the doctor. I was like, no, I'm not going to a doctor. I don't care what you say. I'm going to find the solution. And I ended up finally finding the solution. I, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I had just moved to Virginia Beach. I had just started playing around with paleo. because I heard some awesome researchers in the field of neuroscience and some amazing health enthusiasts who were talking about the paleo diet. And my brother and I, we were driving somewhere in Virginia Beach, and we listened to a podcast of a neuroscientist who specializes in ketogenic diets as it relates to seizure patients. That was his main cause of studies. And I heard that podcast, and I was like, holy shit, this is mind-blowing. What? You can cure seizures with the ketogenic diet. Oh my God, that makes sense. Like, I never thought of that. Like, in my nutrition classes, they touched on a ketogenic diet one time, and they said, don't do it because it causes ketoacidosis. Now I know that that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. It's almost impossible to get ketoacidosis. It's literally almost impossible. It's really only a worry for type 1 diabetics, not any normal human being. And I just noticed, man, when I was in nutrition classes, a lot of the things weren't adding up to what the anatomy was saying. And so I guess over the years, man, it just became more and more of an obsession, and just constantly trying to find answers. And it was, obviously it started out as very, I guess, just selfish things, not selfish entirely, but just I wanted to look good and be strong, and then it just slowly morphed into health. And now it's this crazy obsession that I have about just being not just physically fit and athletically fit, but I want my brain to work. I want my sex drive to work. I want my digestive system to work. I want to live to be 100 years old without any heart disease. I don't want to have any cancers that exist. I don't want anything to happen. I don't want any autoimmune disorders. I don't want any of that, because now I know how important it is to sustain life and actually live life to its fullest. And you can't do that with serious illnesses because it takes a huge drain on your body. So, yeah, long-winded answer, man. I can't. It's impossible for me to give these short answers, I guess.
No, it's funny because like every time I ask you a question, I just feel like I'm getting 3 times as much as I thought I'd get at, more than I expected. So it's just really cool to see, so much more depth than, I was, I guess, initially anticipating. It's really rad.
Yeah, no doubt. So, yeah, and we are super excited to get this information, and we want to get more of this information in the future for sure, because I know that our 3 listeners, we have a joke that we have 3 listeners. Our 3 listeners will enjoy this.
Hell yeah.
And it's going to be something that I think a lot of people will want to hear about, and it's really interesting. And I like the point that you were persistent and you kept trying and you kept finding things that worked, and you're still finding things that work. So that's awesome. And I am really happy to hear that you're grinding like that.
Yeah, and I guess if we have any future meetings on here, it would be way easier to have specific topics, because I've got a bad habit of going. But it's been an obsession of mine, and it's almost, and I'm doing it right now. I have so much of this information that I'm excited to tell people about, because I really do care about people's health. Like, I want to help people. But it's gotten to the point where I almost throw up information on people. Like they ask me a question, I'm like, there you go. There's that, which is not an effective way of handling it.